the U.S. had set up most recently that they, being the Ukrainians, are allowed to use U.S.-provided weapons on the other side of the border in what are commonly referred to as cross-border fires. That being said, the U.S. does not allow Ukraine to, say, shoot all the way into Moscow. And so even if Ukraine saw Russia amassing troops in its capital, like it did nearby its border this time, they would not be allowed to use U.S. weapons to attack those troops in Moscow.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by defense reporter Mike Brest. Mike, how the tables have turned. Now there are reports of Ukrainian incursions into Russian territory. What does this mean for the war?
So earlier this week, we saw reports, almost out of nowhere really, that a small contingent of Ukrainian troops, about 300 we heard, actually invaded a portion of Russia right over the border in an area called Kursk. And so it's not exactly clear what the premise of this attack was, or sort of what they were hoping to gain, because the truth is they don't have the manpower or the resources to hold Russian land. And they had to divert resources from the front lines to actually accomplish this. Now, some military experts are positing that part of the reason Ukraine went about this mission was to actually sort of infiltrate Vladimir Putin's bubble of superiority, or sort of an inability to actually get hurt in the war. And so we've seen some people suggest that this could be, sort of a way to pop Putin's bubble that he's set up for Russia, the Russian media, the Russian people. That being said, we've heard the U.S. say that they're okay with this attack. We heard that from DOD today, but it's not clear exactly what comes next. Is there another Ukrainian attack in Russian territory? Will they pull back? How will Russia respond to this, what Putin described as an escalation?
And the West and the Biden administration in particular have previously not been comfortable with this.
That's exactly right. Now, this still falls within the lines that the U.S. had set up most recently, that they, being the Ukrainians, are allowed to use U.S.-provided weapons on the other side of the border in what are commonly referred to as cross-border fires. That being said, the U.S. does not allow Ukraine to, say, shoot all the way into Moscow. And so even if Ukraine saw Russia amassing troops in its capital, like it did nearby its border this time, they would not be allowed to use U.S. weapons to attack those troops in Moscow. It's the very limited range, and the U.S. has been very careful not to provide a specific number, X miles away from the border that they can use those weapons in. But so this was an example of a big offensive move that fell well within the bounds of how the U.S. set up their restrictions.
So Vice President Kamala Harris has a new running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and there has been some controversy surrounding his military service record. He was in the military for quite some time. What is the nature of the dispute?
So he served in the Army National Guard for 24 years. And so he served... He enlisted when he was 17. He served for 24 years, as I mentioned. However, the controversy is when he got out, he actually first filed to run for Congress before he had officially retired from the military, and his troops, only 2 months after he had retired, received notice that they had to start preparing for a deployment. And so his unit ended up deploying to Iraq about a year after he had retired. Now, he was in charge of this unit, so there have been members of that unit who have spoken out since and said that they were upset that they felt that he left his unit to go to war without them. And so Governor Waltz has been a long-standing member of the House Armed Services Committee when he was in Congress. He has done a lot for veterans, is what the the Harris campaign has said in the aftermath of sort of this backlash. But it really started when President Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, brought it up on the campaign trail, and Senator Vance did serve in Iraq for a short period of time. And so he accused Governor Waltz of sort of abandoning his men. And so while Governor Waltz did not end up going to a war zone during his time in the National Guard. He did deploy overseas, where he was stationed in Italy in 2003, and at that point they were assisting in the war in Afghanistan, but from afar.
And yeah, so the phrase "in support of" has become pretty key. Some people feel that he left the impression that he was in a war zone, but there have also been a lot of quotes where he's clear that he's in some kind of support role that wasn't there.
That's right. And so we've also seen videos of him campaigning in the past where he has said things sort of along the lines in the conversation about gun control, that weapons that he used in war should not be on the streets. Now the problem is, while he is undoubtedly very familiar with those weapons, it's not clear from any record that we've seen that he actually was on a battlefield in a combat zone for any extended period of time.
So now there are two top internet search terms that I never thought would be associated together, and that's ISIS and Taylor Swift. What's going on there?
So Taylor Swift was set to perform on her Eras tour this week in Austria. However, all three concerts have been canceled after law enforcement officials got word of an imminent terror attack. And so it's come out in the aftermath that two teenagers have been arrested, and it's believed that they were indoctrinated online, they were radicalized, and they were planning on carrying out some sort of attack outside or in the Taylor Swift concert itself, but that was what's believed to be the target. And so this is a clear example, again, of the dangers that concerts are for these types of threats. We saw the attack earlier this year at a concert hall in Moscow. We saw an Ariana Grande concert targeted a couple years ago in the UK. And so one expert I talked to earlier today mentioned that ISIS-K, the Afghanistan branch, called earlier this spring for concerts to be attacked. And so that was, while it's unclear...
Because they're mass events attended by lots of people.
And so... and it's a Western cultural icon, depending on who these artists are.
Right.
Taylor Swift is an international icon on one of the most popular tours ever. If an attack were to occur, it would make international headlines, the way some of these other attacks had. And so it is interesting to see how the threat of homegrown terror continues throughout Europe. We've seen some concerning action at the Olympics. However, law enforcement has stopped a couple attacks there.
Thank you, Mike. You can read Mike and the rest of our national security team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.